Thank you. Senator Capito.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I thank the ranking member and thank all of you for being here today. I will say anecdotally in my office, we had like 10 of my staff members. I said, who was affected by what happened? About 4 of them were affected, so that shows you the breadth of Southwest, I think. And they were all satisfied with while a lot of frustrations at the time and all of that, satisfied with the remedies that Southwest brought forward to them. So I think, if we're going to find some good news here, I think that is a little bit of good news, at least for those. I understand it may not be universal, but at least in those 4, they were. Mr. Watterson, your CEO in an interview last week said that it's a misconception that technology was the issue and blamed more the storm, understanding that it's more than one thing. But I'm hearing in the testimony and response to questions and the fact that you're putting a large investment in technology, that it is, in fact, the technology. How would you respond to that?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, there were technology issues during the disruption, and we don't dispute that, and we will make the necessary investments there. All we were trying to say is the problem or the root cause was how we handled our winter operations, and that's where we will see us put some focus over a multi-year period because that's what started the dominoes falling. The last domino was the crew scheduling system not being able to function as we'd like, but it was the upstream stuff that was the bigger problem that we're addressing.
Well, I understand one of the other problems, too, was de-icing. Say in Denver, there was not enough de-icing equipment. The plane sits out, you got to come back around, get back in line, and then you run into timing problems and other things. How are you addressing that de-icing in those areas that obviously Denver, Chicago, need the extra equipment? And I understand that's your responsibility, really, as an airline, to provide that rather than the airport.
Thank you, Senator. In general, yes, the de-icing pads, in some airports you must de-ice in a specific location to have the fluid recaptured. That's done in conjunction with the airport. Mm-hmm. And so we are meeting with Denver Airport on February 14th to discuss this and following up also with Chicago as well as other airports as far as those infrastructure. But then the other equipment and staffing is our responsibility. And we were definitely evaluating everything and making the necessary investments from top to bottom. It's not just in those areas, but also technology used in de-icing, our training, our procedures. We're looking at everything to see what we can do to up our game so this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I saw a lot of heads nodding there in the pilot population on that question. Another thing I've wondered, did you ever run a worst case scenario? I mean, certainly, you always want to plan for the worst. But did you ever run a full-out scenario where you could anticipate a bad storm, de-icing issues, so that you could have gone back to those trial runs to see how we can fix this more quickly?
Thank you, Senator. In regards to winter operations, what we look at is our throughput of how many aircraft per hour we're able to effectively de-ice in different levels of storms. And so the initial plan that I referenced in my testimony was based on our previous modeling of how much we could per hour handle in our de-icing pads and such in Denver and Midway. Those, based on history, those proved to be incorrect for this storm. And that's why we need to go back and reinvest in those areas so that we can more robustly achieve those throughput rates.
All right. Well, I would highly recommend that. I mean, that also could have brought up, I think, more quickly your technology failures as well. Ms. Pinkerton, we were talking about compensating customers, and I know that some of my colleagues are pushing for an airline consumer protection law similar to what they have in the EU. How do you think, when we see what the response of Southwest has been, would this change that, or would it how do you think that would impact what we saw as their response?
Well, as I mentioned in my opening comments, collectively the industry has refunded $32 billion since the pandemic. And I think that having an EU-type compensation in this country would be a disaster. I mean, deregulation has been an enormous benefit for consumers.
A disaster in that it would be more costly to the consumer?
Absolutely.
Or confusing?
You all are too young to remember this, but it used to be that only the rich could fly. That's not the case anymore, and we'd like to keep it that way. There's no doubt that deregulation has democratized air travel, and yes, a compensation system, and there have been analysis that have been done of the EU system, it just adds cost. It doesn't fix the problem. Southwest and all of our carriers have made record investments in our technology to make it more resilient, to recover more quickly. $21 billion this year. We're expecting $27 billion next year. We need that money to continue to invest in our people and our product and our customers.
Thank you. And I'd like to say to the men and women that work in the airlines, particularly the ones flying into places like West Virginia, although Southwest is not, thank you for keeping us safe. It is with great pride, I think, for us to feel when we sit down in that and buckle in that we're handled with great professionals who have our safety at the top of the list. So thank you all very much for that.